Okay, everybody, this is Ken Newhouse, and I've got our guest, Dr. Michael Neal from Build My Team. So, Dr. Mike, on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic, Ken. Thank you. And thanks for having me.
It was definitely the honor. After you and I talked the first time, and I looked at some of the stuff you were doing, I was literally, and this doesn't happen often, happens quite often actually with the guests I have, but just in general, I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised at what you had put together.
Thank you.
Because as you and I had discussed, as it relates to hiring the right employees and all that's involved, and all the terrible things that happen when you make a hiring mistake, I put together a hiring system which was just a conglomeration of bits and pieces of the work other people had done, and I didn't take any credit for it. I didn't sell it. I just gave it away because it helped people. But when I saw what you were doing, I mean, it was like the difference between, like a Matchbox little play car that you buy for $2 when you're a kid versus a car that's running at the Indy 500 or the Daytona 500. There's not really a comparison. We're going to get into that in just a bit, but if you could, obviously I've already covered your bio and the introduction, but if you could take a minute or two and just in your own words, give us your backstory if you could.
You bet. So I'm a practicing doc. My wife and I practice together. I see patients usually now just 3 to 4 days a month, and she sees folks the rest of the time. This whole company was born out of the massive frustration and just constant revolving door for hiring issues that we faced within the practice. We're located in a rural area, and a lot of experienced folks don't come in, which I think are similar to a lot of practices in America. And we just had one problem after another with people in every single level. So it was really reflective of our hiring systems. I think more accurately, we didn't have a system, and so we created one.
And that's the system we're going to talk about here in just a bit. And guys, I will tell you this. Yeah, I wasn't expecting it when we first talked, but Dr. Mike was kind enough to take me through kind of a faux presentation that he would take a potential client through. And it didn't take but a few minutes. And I was literally, I was picking my jaw because I was really, really impressed. I'm a technical guy, and the technical sophistication of this, not on the user end, it's easy for users to use, but on the actual functionality and the skeleton and the framework of this system is very, very sophisticated and super, super cool. But next
Thanks.
Question, Dr. Mike, I'm still impressed by that. I told a lot of people about it, and I'm looking forward to putting this. I initially asked you, I didn't know if you worked with dentists or not. You said you did, but this is something that I've got to get not only to my dental clients, but to everybody who listens to my show, because it's that important. But having said that, is there, and I think this is something we did talk about as well, but is there a situation or a person that really impacted you? You kind of touched on it a little bit just a second ago in the previous question, but was there one incident or one particular person that led you in the direction you are now, where you're like, hey, listen, I got to fix this. This is the last time this can happen to me. It can't happen anymore. I'm going to fix it.
Yeah, twofold. My wife, essentially, amazing clinician, fantastic doctor. And of course, the more empathetic the person is, the further they should be kept away from hiring, essentially. So she ended up bringing on folks that I would describe wounded puppies, essentially. She wanted to nurse them back to health. She wanted to take care of them. And this is terrific, but you can't do that in a high volume healthcare environment. So the absolute critical point for me, the tipping point, I go into the front behind the reception desk, and I hear this beeping, and it's beep, beep, beep. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I thought a computer was on the fritz. I didn't know what was going on. Turns out one of our technicians was facing the corner, just sitting there. You know what she was doing?
Facebook.
Charging her ankle bracelet.
Charging her ankle bracelet.
Charging her ankle bracelet. She was on work release. She was.
Okay. So I'm thinking just like some sort of advanced jewelry or some sort of kid thing that I don't know anything about as a dad. And this is someone who's being monitored by the police.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. Yep. She got tied up in some stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with work. And the practice, I, I can go on and on. She was charging her ankle bracelet. I stood there, I was dumbfounded, and I just thought, this is it. I'm going to figure this out, do an incredibly deep dive into how amazing companies hire their people. And we have to turn this around because I can't continue with this. I just absolutely can't. And the backstory behind that is just simply, I mean, my wife and I got to the point where it was so awful at home that that we almost got divorced over this. It was really critical. And if anybody out there listening is a husband-wife duo within healthcare, they're nodding their head right now thinking, yep, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
I'll take it a step further because not only did I have my wife working in the office with me, I had my sister in the office
Oh boy.
as well. One sister at who was my office manager, and my other sister was one of my associate doctors. So think about the tension between three women who they get along wonderfully out of work. But I just that's one of the reasons I swore I never would work with family members again because it was my practice. And the thing with you and your wife is different because it's a shared practice.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I'm the doctor. I should be in charge, and so everybody has an opinion, and it's not like boss and employee. It's like, hey, I'm your wife, or hey, I'm your sister, or hey, I'm your other sister, and I'm a doctor too.
Yeah.
So that was just that was difficult. So what I want to do now, obviously, I want to just kind of dive in. And by the way, I want to say this very quickly, just for your benefit and for a lot of dentists. I think the story you have, Dr. Mike, we just did a series on stories and storytelling for business. But having said that, you have a great story that I think will resonate with dentists when you talk about the gal with the ankle bracelet. And here's why, because a lot of dentists, unfortunately, I don't think I've ever met a dentist who wasn't super, super smart, but I think a lot of these people, like you mentioned, are empathetic towards the people they hire.
Yeah.
And one of their biggest problems is they get ripped off. There's a lot of embezzlement that happens in dental offices, even more so than happened with respect to me in the chiropractic offices that I had. But I think that story will resonate with them. Number one, it's true. Number two, because it's one of their biggest sources of consternation and actually monetary loss in practice. So definitely want to share that story. What I want to do now, it's a little bit of a different approach than I normally take, is that I want to actually, as we move in and talk about all the problems, I mean, and there are so many, I want to talk about the big ones that occur when you hire the wrong person. The cost associated, I mean, just so many different things. So I want to go through kind of like a word game with you, kind of a rapid fire word game. So I'll give you a word or a phrase, and then I just want your gut visceral response. Take a minute or two to answer it, or, as long as you need to give a complete answer. But I did a lot of reading and research on this over the last couple of weeks, and I'm shocked. So if I've got a stat that's been updated, please feel free to update that. But
You bet.
if you're ready,
fire away.
Let's roll. Here we go. Okay, so as it relates to the cost of a bad hire, here's the two words that I want to say. Productivity costs. What comes to mind when you hire the wrong person?
Mediocrity, or even worse is somebody who's caustic to the environment. So I say on the mediocrity side of things, let's say you bring somebody in who's great at an interview, they do the minimum. Have you ever seen a practice get rid of an employee because they're mediocre? It happens so rarely. They do the minimum. They're very, very difficult to get rid of. And what was the second part of that?
Well, just the productivity cost. So let me give you an example. I don't think I set this up correctly. So if I were to say productivity costs, if somebody were to ask me this as it relates to a bad hire, well, productivity costs is number one. I'm not getting the productivity out of an employee who's qualified to do the job, both either if it's a technical qualification or if it's a character qualification. There are people who are super, super smart who do really good work, but they're lazy. One of my biggest pet peeves in working with dental offices for the longest time, and that's why I really narrowed down the qualifications of who I would allow to be a client of mine, was that the staff many times would become upset at the idea of getting busier, and I would hear things like, well, if we're going to see more patients and he's going to make more money or she's going to make more money, I better get paid more money. Or they got mad because I would say, hey, listen, you're on the clock. You shouldn't be on Facebook right now. If it's for work, if it's a strategic Facebook post for work, that's great. But when you're sitting there and things are backing up because you're goofing off on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, that's not cool. And see, they didn't like that. They didn't like the fact that they were being asked to work. Go figure. You're being paid, and yet you're being upset over the fact that someone's asking you to actually work instead of rip the doctor off that you're working for. So that would be how this little game is going to work. So as it relates to the cost, cost could be financial, could be lost productivity, whatever it is. So what about the financial cost of hiring a bad person, the wrong person?
So let's say you figure it out right away. And right away in healthcare is going to be maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. You're looking at, for an hourly wage person, you're looking at somewhere in the realm of $10,000 to $15,000. If you can bring them on and immediately dismiss them within 2 weeks or so, you're still looking at around $5,000, maybe $7,000. And that comes from the cost of bringing them on, all the research to get them, all of the lost time, the training. And then what I really rarely see is a practice that turns around and says, boy, look at the opportunity cost of that person being dismissed. So on the dentistry side of things, your focus was swayed to bringing this person on. That means you're not spending time growing the practice. You're not spending time on all of the additional learnings. Maybe it's reading a book that's outside of dentistry that tells you all about different ways to grow your practice. That's what you're not doing when you're trying not to drown with the hiring problems.
Yeah, and this could actually relate, the same process could relate to a medical practice or a chiropractic practice. And then for everyone who listens who, let's say you're a consultant, because I have a lot of consultants who listen, and actually a good portion of my overall client base are clients. They're individuals, they're solopreneurs, if you will.
Right.
With respect to them, they don't have employees, but these same principles will apply as it relates to the vendors that you hire. And so Dr. Mike's system isn't set up to like vet vendors, but all these same principles apply as far as you losing productivity and just bad morale with respect to, you hire the wrong vendor, you're going to upset a lot of your clients or your customers or whatever. And so all these principles are applicable for virtually every type of business you can imagine. What about employee morale? What's the cost of as it relates to employee morale when it comes to hiring a bad person, the wrong person?
Yeah, absolutely. So rockstar team members can't stand mediocrity. They can't stand anybody who's not pulling their weight, not even close. They're capable of 2 to 3 times the productivity of we'll call it a mediocre type employee. And we've all seen this. The question becomes, how do you get more of the rock stars? And the number one thing we see is that rock stars want to work with more people like themselves. They don't want to work with the mediocre folks, the average folks. There's a term I heard a long time ago, clock punchers. I just love it. Go to work, punch the clock, keep the brain on a low idle, and then go home, that type of thing. They really don't want anything like that. And so unintentionally, by facilitating folks who aren't in the rock star category type thing, it makes it more and more difficult to bring those types of folks in.
Yeah, that reminds me of, I mentioned my sister, Robin, was my office manager, and she was like my head office manager over all of the different offices that I had. And, she came to me a couple different times, I remember, and, eventually it led to her leaving my employment. It was a decision we both made, but she's like, hey, listen, you've got to hire the people you're hiring to, in a supportive role to me, are not getting their work done, and it's affecting my ability to get my other work done because I'm having to go back and do their work. And so number one, not only is it frustrating to me, but because I'm not able to put my heart and soul into the really, really important work that I'm supposed to be doing, but now I have to go back and clean up their mess, and I'm constantly having to talk to these people. They're giving me attitude or they're making excuses, and it's just screwing up my whole mindset. So I can definitely understand. And that's really what was the genesis for my, at the time, which was, in my estimation, a really good idea to put together this quote unquote hiring system. But now that I've seen your system, if I had employees, I would never, ever do it any other way. And we're going to get to that in just a bit here. But let me give you a couple more of these.
Yeah, I want to add something to your
Sure,
point
sure.
there,
Yeah, go
Ken.
ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Here's a quotation, Gruner and Whitaker: "The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate." So I have that on a wall in front of my desk. On the days when you might think, maybe I'm going to push this decision, kick it down the road a little bit. What you're unintentionally doing is you're saying to the rest of your team that the behavior that they want to get rid of is now tolerable because the boss didn't say it's intolerable. It's such a very simple and eloquent quote from their side of things, but really the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. I would ask the listeners to kind of ponder that a little bit and think about that in a practicing scenario. You have to draw the line, and anytime somebody goes over the line, if you're not if you're not putting a stop to that or having your team put a stop to that, you are by definition tolerating it.
And that's also, and you bring up a great point, that is a direct reflection on you. Every behavior of your staff really is your behavior, whether it's online or off. And so if you've got an employee who's slacking, is a direct reflection on you. And so people eventually are going to start to see you as a slacker. If you have a dishonest employee, eventually that's going to reflect on you, and you're going to be seen. Here's a real quick example. There've been several instances, and I mentioned these earlier, where dentists have actually, great dentists, ethical people, really good people, just in general, just good people that really love their patients. They're really passionate about dentistry. And I've seen this in a couple other, business settings, and they end up having somebody steal money from them. Or in one other case, the person actually committed a crime, but they were employed at this person's business. Well, that reflected directly on the business owner and made them look kind of shady, even though they had nothing to do with this and it was outside of their business. And then in the other instances where the dentists were being ripped off of hundreds of thousands of dollars, this caused people in their community to really question their intellect. Are these people really smart enough? Are they on top enough? Are they aware enough? If they aren't aware enough on top enough of the situation in their own practice to know that somebody's stealing money from them, which is kind of unfair, I will admit. But still, they lost patients because patients really had lost trust in them when they were the ones being victimized. So this has far-reaching, deep ramifications. Any way you want to look at this, there's no way to spin this good if you hire the wrong person. It's just not possible.
And to that point, just quickly, we went through this in my wife's practice where the office manager several years ago, before Build My Team took this over, 22 felonies, Ken. That's what the embezzlement was, how that was handled by the Pennsylvania State Police, 22 felonies. So we've been through that. And that's, every dentist, every doc who's been embezzled from, you just shake your head. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I want to allow this to happen. But again, I look back on the what we were doing at the time, and the toleration component of it was in play.
Yeah, other than being embezzled from, I'll just quickly say this: the straw for me that broke the camel's back. I had a gal that worked for me in my own office. So I had multiple locations, but the office where I primarily worked 4 days a week, saw my own patients there. Her name was Bridget. She had a high school education, but she was literally one of the best office managers I ever had because patients loved her. She did a great job. And the fact that she brought me referrals, like when she was out and about, and she made an enormous amount of money. She was making almost $70,000 a year with a high school education because of all the bonus money she was making. But she came to me on a Friday and said, my best friend from high school is getting married, and this is back in West Virginia, and I'm going to the wedding on Monday. I said, wait a minute, we just spent $10,000 or $12,000 on a promotional campaign. We're going to be slammed with new patients next week. You can't leave. I don't have anyone to cover. You're just now coming. She goes, I just found out about it. I said, you can't leave. She said, I'm going. I said, if you leave, you're not going to have a job. So over the weekend, I figured she wouldn't go. But over the weekend, she came in. Her sister was a patient of mine. She deleted all the files in the computer system that her sister had. She stole a whole bunch of money from me and stole all of my supplements because we had a ton of, $5,000, $6,000 worth of supplements as well. And this was 20 years ago. But for me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back when it came to hiring the right people. Okay, so what about these two? I'm going to give you a couple more, and then we'll dig into the last couple questions, and then we're going to talk about what it is that you've got as a solution. Okay, how about this? when you hire the wrong person, how does that affect the cultural balance in your company?
If somebody's absolutely terrible, like we were talking about the mediocre or worse versus a rock star, it's caustic. If it gets worse than that, I would describe it as carcinogenic. Pretty strong word, but that's how the team members feel. They go from loving showing up at work or having a great time at work to trying to run the day based on avoidance of the person that's in question. Healthcare is delivered by a team. Whether the doc thinks that they're the be all end all of the practice, I mean, we all know that it's the team that really does the delivery. The doc's the figurehead or does the treatment in so many different ways. But when you have somebody like that on board, I've seen it. It's avoidance. So
Yeah,
you talk about productivity. Well, what happens when you avoid productivity?
I mean, it's a downhill spiral from there. What about brand reputation?
You
Hire
take a
the wrong
hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thankfully, this in a lot of ways is heavily reliant upon the doctor and the care that's provided. But on the team side of things, Google reviews first and foremost. You have somebody who is more of that caustic presence that might think that the patient is really secondary because they're God's gift to the practice. You're going to see it. You just wait. The patient walks out the door, and before they get to the car, they're banging out the Google review.
Yep.
That's where the 1-stars come from. Nobody gets 1-star care in healthcare. It's extremely rare. That's when the emotional component is attached to the review, and they want you to suffer. They want to take you to the cleaners because somebody in your practice made them emotionally upset, and now they're coming back.
Now, listen, you didn't read my questions, but I'm going to jump ahead to one of my questions that I have because this actually dovetails perfectly, but I've seen it in multiple instances. I've worked with a lot of chiropractors and dentists. Speaking of doctors, I've only worked with a handful of medical doctors over the last 25 years, but I have worked with a lot of dentists and chiropractors. And one of the things that I've seen that literally is horrifying to me deals when you hire the wrong person, you end up keeping that person too long. And then when you ultimately get to the point of firing that person, the damage they do to your reputation online, they create all these fake email addresses, write all these negative fake reviews is astonishing. And so making sure you hire the right person and build a firewall against hiring the wrong person. I mean, the emotional devastation when you have a doctor who is way above board, who does phenomenal work, who really has has great reviews on Google or any other, like ZocDoc or wherever. And then they end up getting, 3 or 4 1-star reviews where they're just so over the top that they're almost they're incredulous. But the fact is that still stains your reputation. And in a lot of instances, you can't get that stuff removed. There's a place called the Ripoff Report. I saw one doctor literally get devastated. An ex-employee wrote something on the Ripoff Report. The ripoffreport.com wanted like 50 grand to remove that. It's like extortion. I don't know if they're still around today. That was many years ago. Yeah. And they have so many people that would use that website that it would rank
That's
like
disgusting.
It is disgusting. It would rank at the top. I don't see how somebody didn't snuff those people out, but I don't even know if they were in the United States, but literally it was an extortion ring. They ranked so high because so many people use their website that if they wrote something negative about you, it was the #1 Google search for you no matter what, and almost impossible to get rid of unless you paid them enormous amounts of money. So I'm not sure if that's still around today, but I just know that was a big deal and it was devastating to the people that it happened to. And it was from an employee who had been fired. Okay, so let's do this. Let's move into my next question. I'm going to cover a couple different stats. Then I want to talk about the solutions you've got. So I'm going to read this because it's actually a little bit of a lengthy question. It says, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, the price of a bad hire is at least 30% of the employee's first year earnings. And what I'd like you to do, I want you to dive into this, but based on my experience, I want you to also address another huge financial loss from hiring the wrong person, a bad hire. And you touched on this earlier. It's almost like you read my questions, like you read my mind, but the cost of lost opportunity, which for me was like, that was the one that really got me the most. How much could I have done had I not hired this moron or this thief or this person who just really a good person, a good heart, just not qualified to do the work, because I felt sorry. The husband had been friends of ours from church. Husband had been laid off. He was an engineer. And I hired this gal. I hired this gal, sweet lady, and she just couldn't do the job. Honest as the day is long, sweet. I mean, nothing bad other than she just couldn't do the work. She worked at a snail's pace, and I was going to fire her, and which was very difficult. And they begged me to keep her on because of the fact that, he didn't have a job, and they were friends of mine from church. And I kept her on for 6 months, and it cost me an enormous amount of money. When I say friends, they were good acquaintances. They weren't like my best friends. If it was that would be different. But I just think about how much money I lost as a result of her just not being able to do the work.
Yeah, and I would approach that a little bit differently. She was brought on because of the personality that she had, super sweet, she said, and she was also brought on because other folks were strongly encouraging you / twisting your arm. Our philosophy at the company, at Build My Team, is to approach it differently. Everybody, including that woman, has her own strengths. So we have to find out what that person's strengths are, what she wakes up in the morning to, she just does without even thinking twice, thinks it's not special or anything like that. Let's find out what those are. And then let's get her a position where somebody's going to compensate her for doing what she thinks is completely and utterly normal. She doesn't get why it's special. That's the foundational approach of how Build My Team is created. So that woman, instead of costing you all of the opportunity for the 6 months, could have been moved into a different position, the proverbial Walmart greeter perhaps, where she just loved being surrounded by people, loved talking all day long, etc., where she didn't have to get anything done. That would be the focus for her position. She would be incredibly happy, be grateful that somebody would actually pay her to do something so easy, etc., etc. And then in your particular case, that gets you out of having to be in that type of position, right? So our focus is on the strengths, as I said, and let's get back to the opportunity cost. The story I like to tell is go for a swim, hop into the pool wearing winter boots. Okay, can you do it? Can you swim while wearing winter boots?
I would eventually fatigue out because my arms would not carry me.
Right, exactly. So throw some exercise weights on your arms while you're doing it too. Are you going to be able to swim? The answer is yes. At what point do you give up? Well, Dr.
Mike, you sound like my ex-wife here. Let's not kill me off before the end of the show.
Oh, exactly. But that's the thing. You can get rid of all of that stuff. It's a ridiculous example. But when you're in the practice, when you have folks like that, we see it all the time. Practices put up with this. So you're never able to do anything other than try and just tread water. We would switch the approach to say, stop with the proverbial firefighting. Let's concentrate on some fire prevention for even a day. We get the fire prevention methods in place, and now all of a sudden you can get out of this big mess that you're in. And that's what we've been doing with clients.
Nice. One other scenario that I want to bring up that I didn't bring up that's really, I think, more apropos, more relative to the dental practice is that dentists, for the most part, and I never understood this until Howard Fran, he's the CEO of Dental Town, was on my show, and he just said, hey, here's the deal. A lot of dentists just want to do dentistry, and they leave all of the business stuff, the growth of the practice, things like that. They leave a lot of that up to their office manager. And so there are a lot of times when you have an office manager who has their ideas of how successful or profitable or busy or the type of patients they want to see or not. And so in my estimation, that would be like my worst nightmare if I had someone who behind my back was subverting my goals for in place of their own. And so is your system, is there a way to like filter those kind of people out? I'm sure there is. There has to be.
Yeah. So the core principle there is goal alignment, and that's absolutely critical. If your goals are 50% of what their goals are, all you're going to do is have all kinds of problems trying to get anywhere. If your goals are virtually and completely aligned, Now you're both moving forward in essentially the same direction as fast as you can possibly go. So the way that we start with that is mindset. A lot of hiring focuses around personality. You hire the smile, you train the skill, that type of thing. We look at that as about midway through the assessment process. Mindset's number one. If a person doesn't have the right mindset for a healthcare practice, whether it be dentistry, chiropractic, eye care, it doesn't matter. What's going to happen is you'll bring them on, everything appears to be fantastic, you start plugging all the money in with training, etc., and then they just up and leave, or worse yet, you want them to leave, but it's difficult to get them to do so. That's why we start with the mindset first.
Yeah, that's the thing that I just really liked about your system, is that you've got this firewall set up in the process, so that if people can't make it through this initial filtration system, the system, essentially removes them. They're done. And so that there's no additional expense, or you're not paying for all these other evaluations to take place, because it nips them in the bud. It pulls them up by the roots, so to speak, before they're even allowed to start to sprout or get a good, a good solid foundation. Kind of walk us through the process. So let's say that let's, for the sake of example, and I know your system is pretty much set up for healthcare professionals, but let's say that I've got a practice, and guys, again, if you're not a healthcare professional, these principles are still going to apply when you hire vendors. And even I'll take it so far as to say this applies to you, whether or not you're willing to accept certain kinds of clients or customers into your business. Not only did I filter all the employees that I hired, and I highly suggest you do that now utilizing Dr. Mike's system, but you should be filtering the type of new clients or customers, patients that you allow into your practice, because if a negative employee can be toxic, so can the people that you bring into your business to serve. I mean, we've all got the quote unquote, that one person, Mary, that when we see her on the schedule, it's like, not her, not today. Not today. Today of all days, I don't want to deal with Mary. And so even if you don't have a medical practice or a dental practice or chiropractic practice, you're not is it ophthalmologist or optometrist? I'm not sure.
Optometrist.
Okay. It doesn't matter, whichever one you have. If you're not one of those type of if you're not a healthcare provider, you still can apply these same principles to the people that work with you, and also to the people that you accept into your business as a new client or customer. And so with respect to that, walk us through the process of how this process works.
Sure. First of all, it's not limited to healthcare. We've hired folks from all kinds of industries.
My bad.
The craziest position we've hired at this point is a locksmith. 100% nothing to do with healthcare.
You told me that. I apologize. I forgot. You're right.
Yeah. So the first thing we start off as I said, is the mindset. If
wait. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to interrupt. Tell the locksmith story, because that was golden. I got to hear that again.
This poor fellow, he comes from corporate America. He decides he wants to own a business. God bless him. It's the American dream. So he buys a locksmith franchise in a state that the state required a master locksmith license for the business to open the doors. Now, not that it had doors, but to get the mobile locksmith van out, etc. So he was on the hook for a locksmith franchise fee, all of the expenses for the business, and could not legally bring in $1 of revenue until he hired a master locksmith. Now, you'd think that was something that would be upstream a little bit in the decision-making process, but he didn't, and this guy's a fantastic person. He didn't realize that it would be so incredibly difficult to find a locksmith. We found one for him. He's up and running.
Which is not healthcare, which is awesome. So I apologize. I had completely forgotten about that. It's been a little bit of time since we talked, but
our focus is on healthcare by far. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So go ahead and run with it. Tell us about the process of how all this works.
Sure. So this was created and modeled after how some companies, a little outfit called the Four Seasons and another one called Ritz-Carlton, how they model their hiring process. They turn the whole thing upside down. So they're not looking for people who can do the job. The immediate approach is to look for everybody who can't do the job and remove them. So to give you an example, long ago, Four Seasons in Maui, they are hiring a bartender. This is a bartender who works at one of their pool bars. they had 3,800 applications for this particular position, for a bartender position. So they can't go through and look for anybody who can do the job. Functionally, every single one of them that applied could. The way that they approach this is to use assessments to go through and remove all the people who can't. So we're looking in Build My Team's case, we're looking for mindset that matches healthcare. The people who don't have that exit the process. The next thing that we look for is their cognitive capability. We have, for each of the positions that we're brought in for, there's a benchmark of how intelligent a person should be. And so they're measured against that particular benchmark. On the doctor, let's say the provider side of things, obviously looking for really intelligent people. For other positions, maybe not quite as much, of course. And then, so you got mindset and you have a really intelligent person. You hit the nail on the head earlier on in the discussion. Next thing we're measuring is motivation, because otherwise you get somebody who's got a great mindset, is really intelligent and lazy. What do you do with lazy, right?
That happens more and more today. Absolutely.
Lazy has no place in a healthcare practice whatsoever. You don't want those people saying, "Ugh, now we got to see more patients." You want them to say, "Yes, I can't wait. Now I don't have to sit around." That type of thing. So we're measuring their motivation, and we do it across multiple different spectrums. But how do they want to contribute to their day? And there's some very specific numbers that we're looking for with regards to that. After motivation, we take a look at their personality, and we're looking for matches on things. Let's say for a secretarial position, their dependability, their cooperation. Are they a little bit open-minded or not? Most importantly, what's their stress tolerance? Are they going to show up each day wearing a helmet and a flak jacket and ready to go to war? That's terrific. In a healthcare environment, it's not, on the doctor's side of things, it's always a lot more pleasant than what we see in the front office. So after the personality, what we look for, next step is we're going to back out two components. We don't want volatility, and we also don't want neuroticism. So Ken, in your experience, have you ever had anybody join your team where it's a terrific fit when they're neurotic and volatile?
Never. No.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a leading question, but that's...
that reminds me of my first marriage.
Volatility and neuroticism on a team in healthcare, that gets back to those people that just don't contribute at all. So after that, we take a look at some very nuts and bolts questions, and our software does this automatically. We're looking for things like, can they work the hours that you're expecting them to? So for example, you need them to work till 7 on a Tuesday. The candidate can only work till 6. They have to pick up the kids. They have to do whatever. That's not going to work for you. So those people are backed out. We're taking a look at what their hourly wage range is. Maybe they want 12 to 14 bucks an hour, and you were going to offer 15. We would counsel you not to do that. Offer 13, save 4,000 bucks, and easily pay for our service in one shot. Another option that we ask the candidates, here's the expected driving distance to work. And this is so straightforward. If they're going to be driving 30 minutes in a rural area, well, guess what? It's 30 minutes to get anywhere, right? If they're going to be driving 30 minutes to go to a 13-minute or $13 an hour job in more of a metropolitan area, how many folks are they going to be driving by that might offer them 50 cents more an hour? That's what we want to avoid, so that this person stays for a long time. We have a whole battery of questions like that. Past that point, when everybody gets to the near the end of the process, we do a video interview. So our team conducts a video interview asking them questions that are specific to the position. And what we're looking for is to gauge their responses. So I'll give you an example. If you're bringing on a receptionist position or something along those lines where they're going to be interacting with patients all day long, do you really want somebody who's going to be LOLing and OMGing everybody to death? Maybe not necessarily.
No, but it's prolific.
Right?
I tell you what, it's prolific. I'm shocked at how many dental offices I've been into and chiropractic offices I've been in where I'm there as the consultant and I'm watching, and there are patients standing at the front desk waiting to check out or check in, and the person's over on their smartphone Snapchatting or Instagramming or holding, their camera up, taking photos or whatever for social media. It's just, it's shocking when I see that. It's just utterly shocking.
Right. And something else our team is looking for, amongst other things, on the video interview, how seriously are they taking this? Are they wearing a proverbial wife beater and shorts while they're doing their video interview? We've seen it. Are they dressed in a suit jacket, sitting at their dining room table? I mean, it doesn't matter necessarily where the location is, but how seriously are they taking it? How are they going to present to your patients at the practice? Those are the types of things we're looking for.
Absolutely. And so, guys, just one thing I want you to consider. Think about the fact that their automated system is going through finite details that in most instances, we just simply would neither have time to ask or we would forget to ask. And if we were to actually run through this in an interview, we would so fatigue ourselves and fatigue the interviewee, whether it's us who are doing the interview process or maybe our office manager or whoever's doing it. Having this automated is totally freeing you up. What's your time worth? If this takes an hour, which would be a joke, this is like 3 or 4 hours worth of work, literally 2-3 hours. They're doing it through automation. How much is your time worth? So, I mean, this to me is, I've seen the presentation. I've looked at the stats. Do me a favor, Dr. Mike.
Mm-hmm.
You told another story and you told some really good stories, but the one story that I did remember that really stuck out to me that I wanted to bring up was the one gal who applied to work in an office like 4 times and she was rejected because her resume wasn't put together well.
Yeah.
And then she applied and went through your system, and then tell that story. Cause that is that's gold.
This got us really excited and just fascinated. The dental hygienist. So pediatric practice, about 80 cases a day. The dentist is just running like crazy. She had an applicant with we'll call it a not great resume. Dental hygienist, everything's great with the person. She applied 3 separate times over the course of, I think it was about a year or so. And the dentist, who a terrific human being, reviewing the resume, nothing caught her eye. There's nothing in that resume that would have said, boy, let's move to the next level. So she ignored the person. On the 4th application, it was through the Build My Team process. We ran her through our entire process, and we went back to the dentist and we said, Doc, we really strongly want you to consider this person. Well, she's applied a whole bunch of times, etc. And we turned around and said, look, respectfully, if you don't hire this dental hygienist, we're going to hire her to run our internal dental team on the hygienist level. And she turned around, moved on her immediately, hired her. She also paid her more than she's ever paid a hygienist. And she told us a couple of weeks after the fact that she's the best hygienist she's ever hired. So here we are. This is the polar opposite end of the spectrum, where this person was just categorically ignored through no fault of either of them. What was broken in this process is the resume. When you're trying to bank on whether or not a person is great at what they do via their resume, that's where your decision-making becomes flawed out of the gate.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Is there anything that I didn't ask you today that I should have asked you? Like, what's the process? Because I'm going to ask you before we get into, hey, how can people connect with you?
Sure.
If they want to look into this, what's the process? What did I not ask you? Because obviously I'm not a complete expert in this whole, systematic process like you are. I'm familiar with it. I think I know more than most people, but still I'm going to defer to your expertise. What did I not ask today that I should have?
I bring up a couple quick things. One, every position within healthcare that we move forward on is guaranteed. So anything that's looking for running through our system, like I said, it's all guaranteed, and the specifics are in the consultation that we set up. That would be the next thing. If anybody wants more information about this, go to buildmyteam.com. You'll see a prompt to schedule a consultation with one of our team members, and that's where we could find out more information about what it is that your practice is going through, and then make sure that we're a terrific fit to solve those problems for you. And then I think the other thing is just know that this entire company was created to solve one problem and that's it. And we want to be the Olympic medalist of hiring rock star team members for healthcare. That's all we're planning on doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, can I ask you, for my own sake, I've never worn glasses. 2010 in this eye, 2015 in this eye, but I've noticed over time that I'm sometimes I don't need reading glasses at all, and I can literally look at the smallest font on my iPhone. I have an iPhone 11, and read on the Kindle, no problem. Other times, I have a hard time reading the big green road signs on the side of the highway. My vision just goes back and forth sometimes. I'm going to get my eyes checked for the very first time for the purposes of getting glasses tomorrow. Any suggestions for me when I go?
Well, first of all, with 2010 vision, you got to stop podcasting and get into your new career as a fighter pilot. So let's just get that going right away.
I'm the only person in my family that has never had visual problems. I'm 54 now. I'm going to be 55 in August, but I'm noticing sometimes maybe I'm on the computer too much. I don't know, but I have exceptionally good vision. Only one that doesn't wear corrective lenses in my family, but it's starting to the point where I use reading glasses sometimes, and I don't know if I should be or not. So that's why I'm going tomorrow.
So it all starts with an eye exam. The best thing I can tell you is just be very, very candid with your doctor. Tell them how you use your vision, what you're looking to accomplish with your vision, and just let them do their job. Yeah.
Oh, all you have to say is I can't hear you. I pushed the button because I've been coughing. I've been clearing my throat today. I've started getting a sore throat. So listen, literally, I know there are people that would go to the doctor and say things like, because I dealt with it in my own practice, not with glasses, but oh, my eyes are fine. I don't have any trouble reading or anything. It's because they don't want to wear glasses. So I'm sure you guys encounter that
all day.
From time to time, it would seem people just want to live in denial. But I just didn't know if there's any insider stuff that would help my office visit go better. I've never been to an eye. I've had eye exams for driving tests and things like that, but never like a real eye exam.
Yeah, make sure they're taking a look at the backs of your eyes. So that would either be through dilation or an instrument called an optos, which is a really special camera that can image almost all of your retina.
Okay.
That's where the serious stuff is usually picked up on. And the thing that I tell patients is that in eye care, and I think this applies to most of healthcare, we want to find everything early, very, very, very early, because there are very few things that can't be treated, cured, managed as long as you find them early.
Okay. I didn't think, I didn't consider any kind of serious health thing. I just thought it was like, my eyeballs are starting to elongate. And so the focal point is changing, but could be some kind of problem. I don't know, but
that probably isn't, but that's what you want to make sure of.
So now I'm not going to sleep tonight, Dr. Mike. Thanks. I'm going to lay awake all night thinking about all these terrible diseases. Hey, listen, I really appreciate it. I need you to send me, unless you want me to use the one on your website, I'll cut this off, a bio, any links that you want me to include in the show notes. Okay. I don't care if it's just for your consultation, if you have links to videos, whatever it is, send me that stuff and I will put it in the show notes on iTunes, and I'll put it in the show notes on the website. And then I'm going to do the same. I'll put all this on .com Dentist, and then I'm going to write an article. I'll have to trim this down and then write an article for Dental Town, because I think that'll get a lot of traction as well. But
thank you.
Anything else you want to add? I'm going to chop all this part off.
I can't think of anything.
Okay. I forgot when you and I are scheduled to talk on your show, but
I think it's next week.
That's what I was thinking too. I just forgot which day it was. But what, tell me again what you want me to try to steer because I think I can talk fluently and cogently on pretty much most subjects that would come up, but you have a specific audience. You want to kind of tie that into what it is that you do, scheduling. Tell me the format of your show so I can try to come up with content that'll be appealing to the people that listen to your show.
It's more what I think would be intriguing on the doctor side, on the listener side of things. Right. So, your backstory of the car accident, used to be a chiropractor. Now you're focusing a lot on dentistry, talking more about that. And I think rather than going down the path of issues you had in your practices, maybe we touch on that a little bit. I would love to hear your virtually unique perspective on issues dentists face, issues chiros face, where there's uniqueness to those issues, where there's crossover or, similarities, that type of thing. Because I don't know if anybody else is a dentist and a chiropractor. I'm sorry, dental experience and a chiropractic experience.
Well, I have unique experience in that. Yes, I was a chiropractor for 17 years, but I've worked with a ton of dentists, but I've also worked with a handful of medical doctors. And the ones that I worked with for a long time. I literally went in and reworked their entire practice. And so I wouldn't say that I'm like an expert in the medical practice, but I've got a seriously strong working knowledge, because every medical practice is not the same. Like every chiropractic practice is not the same. But yeah, so if you just want to ask me questions and lead me in those directions, I can answer however you want to. Obviously lead me with the questions. That's fine. I don't really have an agenda other than, just coming on.
That's how I would normally do it. And then I would like to find out what you're interested in talking about too. So any topics that you think might be hot buttons, to
storytelling in your practice. And I mean that, and I think that's important because of you have, that's one of the things I would suggest to you. You have these phenomenal stories you told me when we first talked during our virtual coffee. Mm-hmm. That is what really captivated me. That and the technology you've actually had built has really captivated me. And if you can tell you a really good guy to listen to is David J.P. Phillips. He's over in I think he's in Ireland. Mm-hmm. But I signed up for his course, all his videos and stuff like that. But you can watch his TED Talks on David J.P. Phillips. Make sure you put the J.P. in there, like his middle initials. Yeah. But he does his TED Talks, and they're worth $1 million because they teach you about storytelling. And so storytelling, most people, when you talk about storytelling, doctors in general, whether you're an optometrist or a chiropractor or a dentist or a medical doctor, well, medical doctors really don't tell stories. They're weird. If you're an MD and listening to my show, probably shouldn't be, but I say that tongue in cheek, but for the most part, the doctors, dentists, optometrists, chiropractors, we're really hands-on, gregarious, outgoing people, I would say, for the most part. I don't know that much about your type of doctor. I don't. Mm-hmm. I've never been to one. I've been with my wife, I'll say that, and the lady was super nice and super engaging. That's all I know. But the point is, if you can use storytelling to actually generate a deeper relationship, to build trust and generate referrals with your patients. And if you're not doing that, you're wasting money because you're telling stories all day long. And example real quick, and then I'll let you go. With dentists tell stories to their dental assistants, patients, everybody. Yeah. If you start looking at people, how they communicate, Dr. Mike, people communicate in story.
Sure.
What happened today? Tell me about your day at work. Tell me what's going on. You see a new patient. Tell me how, like you told me, be honest with the doctor. Tell them what you've been experiencing. That's my story.
Right.
If you understand the power of story, because when you tell a story, here's what's cool. You can literally insert your marketing message, your promotional message in the body of the story, which gets past that filter everybody has where they're like, hey, this guy's going to try to sell me something, or this lady's going to try to sell me something I don't want. Or maybe that I want, but maybe I can't afford it. If you tell stories, you get past that filter. If you do this right, and there's an art to doing that, and there's a science to doing that, I would love to talk about that.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, I'll take a look at his TED Talks. Are they TEDx or TED?
TEDx.
TEDx, okay.
You want me to send you the links? Matter of fact, I'll send you the links, but yeah, it's just, they're really, really, really good. They're really good.
So we'll take that storytelling. I'll review that stuff, see what he has to say, and then we can package that around some like referrals, new patients, because all eye care, and as far as I know, most dentists are interested in growing their practice.
That's easy. Let me ask you a question. Are you and your wife getting video testimonials, outcome-based video testimonials from your patients?
No, we're not.
Okay, so here's here. If you like to read,
I'm listening.
If you like to read, like I said, I am an avid reader. You have to pick up Bob Cialdini, Dr. Bob Cialdini, Robert Cialdini.
Yep.
He's the Regent Emeritus Professor at Arizona State University.
Yeah, I know
okay, so
who
you know
he
Bob.
is. Yeah.
The book Influence.
Influence, okay.
5th edition. And then there's another book he wrote called Persuasion.
Yeah, it's sitting beside me. It's on my list. I haven't read it yet.
Okay, so in Influence, he talks about social proof. And the cool thing with testimonials, and I give it away now. I have a video testimonial system we put together. I have 2, one for consultants, one for dentists. You can use the one for dentists. It has real dental, has real dentists on there. There's a way to interview patients and there's a way to get a testimonial, and you let them do the selling for you. There's specific questions you want to ask them. The quality of the answer they give is based on the quality of question you ask. And so you want to let your patients do the selling for you because they don't have skin in the game, so to speak.
Understood. Yep.
Got it. So we can talk about that as well. I can do that all day long. In fact, I just wrote an article for Dental Town for the magazine for that. So it'll be coming out. But yeah, we can talk about that as well. And if you want to give away to your listeners, and I'll give it away, they don't need to give me their email address. If they just want it, I'll make a link available where they can download that entire testimonial system. I mean, they're not dentists, but I'll make that available when we talk if you want.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending that over, that's something I want to review thoroughly.
Oh,
before,
sure, absolutely.
I think we're next Friday, so that's not oodles of time.
I'll get it to you.
Yeah. Ken, you're exceptionally good at this. I don't know if people tell you that, but I can tell you just love what you're doing with this. This is really cool.
I enjoy it. And actually, when I started this, I didn't start it to generate, I wasn't accepting clients when I started it. So, but it is fun. And you get to hear the stories of people. It's just cool. I mean, I'm intrigued by the stories and the lives other people live, because if you don't look at other people and listen to other people, you have a very limited tunnel vision of life. And it's just kind of interesting to listen to the stories they have and see the cool things I like to think that I'm an intelligent person. And then I meet so many other people who are, a lot of them smarter than me, and they've accomplished so much. And I'm just like, wow. And that really inspires me to want to do more and serve more and come up with better ideas. So I have fun with it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I will let you know, probably 3 weeks we're looking at before I launch this.
Okay.
But I'll have it all ready to go and give you everything I need and make sure that I have everything from you that I need so that we get the traffic going to use in the right direction.
And where will this be launched? Which
Get Client. Well, it's going to be on both. Get Clients Now. And that's the show where I have a bazillion fans that download this every month. I've done 335. Well, this week was the show 333. I think I was going to have a 334 this week, 2 shows this week. I'm going to just probably wait till Monday now because of time constraints. But .com Dentist is brand new. I've only got, 10 shows, 9 shows. I don't know. So not that many downloads per show, probably right now, a couple hundred downloads per show, but they're all dentists.
Yep.
Plus I write for Dental Town. Dental Town, I got 1.7 million downloads over the last 10 years of my article views, not downloads.
Okay.
So over 10 years, do the math. It's really not that many, but that's a lot actually.
That's quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, man.
All right. Terrific. Thank you, Ken. This has been fantastic.
You bet. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.